things I get asked a lot about is what does it take to start a business in cannabis? And the easy answer is whatever it is that you do in your typical industry or job or business, you can transition into the cannabis industry because everything is needed. You might have been thinking about doing that for yourself, changing your business into a cannabis business and enjoying the benefits of the green rush. But let me tell you, there are at least these 10 secrets that I'm about to share with you that you really need to know before you start a cannabis. The first secret nobody tells you is that you might have unrealistic expectations. A lot of people romanticize the idea of the cannabis industry overall. They romanticize the idea of getting in on the green rush, like I mentioned before. They see these big numbers of sales and think, I should be able to get a piece of that. And you should be able to get a piece of that pie. But you need to understand what's really going on behind the scenes in the cannabis industry. And you also need to understand that the people that are running the cannabis industry are not sitting on their couches, hanging out, smoking cannabis all day, and just chit-chatting about how to solve the world's problems. More likely, they're doing coke and working all night and all day and all night and all day to make sure that they can control the entire industry. So it's important for you to have a very realistic expectation of what you're going to encounter, and also to set a realistic expectation for the people that might come to work for you in the future. The second secret nobody will tell you is that if it's not working out of cannabis, it's not going to work in cannabis. If you have an HR, tax, insurance, consulting, skincare, beverage, food, catering, etc. company, and you're running into troubles with marketing or with scaling or with really pulling in more of the clientele that you want, you are not going to solve that problem by transitioning into the cannabis industry. And in fact, exactly the opposite will really happen, because it's even harder. You're fighting more competition. You have bigger odds stacked against you. You have a lot of legal structures. And I'm about to tell you 8 more secrets that you need to know before you really decide whether this is the route for you, because it will not fix your problems that you're having with your business. The third secret that nobody is telling you that you need to know before you start your cannabis biz is banking. Banking is difficult in the cannabis industry because right now, cannabis is still a Schedule I drug to the federal government. And you know who else is beholden and tied into the federal government is the banking system and the FDIC, which is who insures your banks and the banks where your money is, right? And so because cannabis businesses are illegal federally, they cannot be insured by FDIC, which means they cannot use regular typical banking services. All right, so that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the complexities of business and business banking and the financial services industry overall when you're talking about the cannabis industry. As long as it's federally illegal, there is going to be big issues with getting banking. One of the dangers with this point about banking is that first off, you're going to pay more, but secondly, the banks are not required to follow the guidelines that they might be required to follow when they are FDIC insured. I had one client who had $10,000 stolen from them by PayPal because PayPal decided that they were running an illegal business. They weren't. It was a totally legal business, but because there was no federal protections, there was no way to appeal that and get that money back. PayPal just got to walk away with their money. The fourth secret you need to know about before you get into cannabis is advertising. So advertising is another area that is regulated by a federal body, the FCC. And the FCC is able to impose fines, restrictions, and consequences on any parties they oversee that do not follow their federal guidelines and regulations. So that means that when you have a canna business and you would like to advertise it as a cannabis in whatever way, whether that's to actual cannabis consumers or whether it's to cannabis businesses, you can't use the word cannabis or marijuana in majority of the marketing and advertising platforms. Google doesn't recognize it. There's no SEO for it. Yes, there is organic, but the point is you're X'd out of a whole lot of advertising mediums when you decide to go into cannabis. Secret number 5 that you need to know before you go into cannabis is the concept of federal benefits. I've already mentioned it on almost every point before, but because cannabis is still scheduled as a Schedule 1 controlled substance with no medical value, that means that the federal government does not recognize cannabis businesses in the same way that they do other businesses. So some of the consequences of that could be that, for example, dispensaries may not have gotten to tap into the PPP loans, at least not legally, without a lot of loopholes and a lot of lawyers covering their tracks. And they don't get to tap into a lot of other legal protections that the federal government provides. That's true also on the side of employees, where they may not be able to tap into federal protections and benefits. And it's definitely true when it comes to contracts that you as a business provider might sign with a dispensary or with a licensed brand, because ultimately, if they default on the contract that they make with you and you sue them, if you don't win right away at the state level and you need to push that up into a federal level of court, you will not be able to win, because the federal court will not hear your case, because in their opinion, it is illegal business right from the beginning. So you won't have that protection, and you will not be able to hold them to their contractual words sometimes. So you've got to be very careful about that. I actually have had one friend who put $50,000 into starting a brand with a dispensary, and after about a year of building that brand, developing it, creating great income for the brand, the dispensary, they just said, "Oh, we changed the name of the brand and now we have a new name and your brand is defunct and we are not paying you back any of your money. Sorry, sue us if you want." And there was nothing to be done. That leads in perfectly to the 6th reason or secret that you need to know before you start a cannabis, and that is that there is big money and big politics at play behind the scenes in the cannabis industry. When you think about how the federal government plays in, and how state governments play in, and how individual state governments play in, and how big pharma plays in, and big real estate, you start to understand and piece together that the money that is controlling the legislation, and the entire system of the cannabis industry in the United States is big money. And they are not going to let you come in and take their business from them. They are very invested in creating laws and creating structure that will ensure that they get to control the market in a lot of different respects, in pharma, in transportation, in real estate, etc. I think you get the point. So understand that that's true, and know that one of the main strategies this big money uses is to literally create legislation and create problems that are so difficult to overcome that most typical small business owners cannot even begin to compete, and they are able to then get rid of all the little guys and swoop up, buy everybody up, and become a giant conglomerate. And so that is certainly what's happening in cannabis, and you need to know that that's possible. It could work in your benefit, because maybe you create something they want to buy and you get to be bought out, but it's important to keep that secret in mind. Secret number 7 is a little thing we call the green tax. Now, in addition to the actual literal green tax, which is known as 280E in the federal IRS tax code, which tells that no dispensaries can actually write off any of their regular business expenses because they are illegally operating. So there is for real a green tax, but on top of that, there is what we call the green tax, where if you have a cannabis business, almost every different type of business, service, or otherwise that you need is going to tack on additional fees to work with your cannabis related company. They do it because they can. They do it because they know that you're going to run into so many companies that will not want to work with you, whether it's because they legally can't or whether they just don't want to because of the stigmas attached. They know that, and they are going to tax you for it. So we call this the green tax. Yes, there's city taxes, there's county taxes, there's state taxes, there's federal taxes, and there's also extra taxes on the photographers and branding companies and PR companies and recruiting companies and business service companies and HR companies, etc. So be ready to have to pay that green tax if you think you want to get into the cannabis industry. Secret number 8 is about censorship. So I've mentioned it already. The FCC oversees advertising across our country, and that can really impact your ability to advertise and market on different platforms, billboards, magazines, TV, radio, internet, websites, etc. But also censorship can happen in all of the environments. So there is many environments and places where people are not going to be okay with you talking about your cannabis business or the business that you provide or the services you provide or the benefits of the product that you sell. And you're just going to have to deal with it. They are usually going to have a right to put those rules in place and to uphold them how they see fit. And you're going to need to comply with that, generally speaking. And that can make it really hard to be able to know when and where you can talk about your product to the people that might want to buy from you. The ninth and maybe most hidden secret is related to the culture clash in cannabis. And when I talk about the culture clash in cannabis, I'm talking about the clash between the actual people who have been a part of the cannabis culture and legacy for decades and generations versus kind of the canna bros, as we like to call them, who have kind of swept in and taken over the industry and the legalization efforts. And the way that it has been done has left a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth when they're talking about dealing with cannabis related companies. There have been a lot of cannabis related companies that came out and burned bridges left and right among the cannabis community, whether that was through moldy products, poor products, or just really high pricing or tricky pricing. Just a lot of different bad methodologies have been used. So if you are going to start a cannabis, I highly recommend that you get to know who the cannabis culture is, what kind of things they have encountered, both through just their own personal cannabis journeys and also through the war on drugs, the racist war on drugs, and all the consequences that have come out about that. And if you can go meet those individuals, the culture, where they're at, and give them solutions to their real problems, then you might have a great product. But if you come in and try to spend $1 million on flashy campaigns and big bright marketing and giving out millions of dollars worth of swag to people who already have millions of dollars worth of swag, you can pretty much assure that you're going to go out in a blaze of glory. So just a word of caution. Last but not least, the 10th secret that you need to know before you start a cannabis biz. Now, I have spent 9 secrets telling you all of the horrors and nightmares that you can and probably will encounter if you decide to start a cannabis business. But in this 10th secret, I'm about to give you the answer, the solution, the way that you can go ahead and still do it and relieve a lot of those tensions. And that is hemp. So hemp, I will not go into a long discussion about the difference between hemp and cannabis because they're the same plant. But once that same plant has less than 0.3% THC, and as long as it goes by that name of hemp, which you can just call it that, then it is suddenly a federally legal substance. Not only can you sell it, you can transport it across the country. You have banking protections. You can tap into all of the federal programs, etc. The 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp nationwide and made it so that you can go ahead and jump into the cannabis business if you use that terminology of hemp or CBD or hemp-derived CBD. You will also hear the terminology full spectrum CBD out there. But as long as you're saying CBD and you're sourcing from plants that have less than 0.3% THC, you are clear, you're in the good, and you can go ahead and do business as usual. So if that's something that's very interesting to you and you have really thought about jumping into the cannabis industry and taking advantage of both the green rush and your personal passion for the plant or for what it does for people, then get in touch with me and I'd love to help you put together your plan. Have a great day. I love you.